Welcome everyone to the Electrical Coaches channel, and today in this video we're going to talk about the ITZ gear base. That's this base you see right here. This base comes in several parts and it has to be put together in order to get this base to perform. You have here is 4 dials with small gears on them, and the prong is connected to that. And you have the shell of the base. This is what's going to hold all of the parts. And you have 2 control knobs, one for the front of the base and one for the rear of the base. And you have this cover that's mounted on top of all the components once they're installed inside the shell. And you have here, this is a front end. This is a rounded front, by the way. ITZ makes these fronts for this type of base, because if you look at the front and the rear of the base, it's a flat front and rear. So some guys use this front and it puts a rounded hump on the front so that the base can get open if you have it on a receiver or perhaps a defensive lineman. This is how the base looks when it's been put together. We're going to take this base and we're going to put it under the microscope, and we're going to do an analysis on the base before we assemble it. And while that's taking place, I have my pliers on the coffee mug warmer that you see here. So we're going to use those pliers to help us tweak the prongs on this base. We're now looking at the underside of the ITZ gear base. This is the shell of the base, and this is the part that's going to hold all of the components that you have seen in the previous frame. Each one of these dials, they fit in these 6 holes that you see here. You have 3 holes on one end of the base and 3 holes on the other end. And the reason why I say ends is because this base, any part of this base could be the front, and any part of this here or here. Any part can be the front or the back, depending on how you situate the prongs in these holes. Now, generally speaking, the dials with the prongs, okay, they fit here, 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 and there. You want a prong on each one of those corners. That's going to stabilize the base. All right? And the control dials, okay, you're going to put one here and one there. Each dial, it has gear teeth that connect to the gear teeth on the prong, which you're going to have in the corners, remember? That's going to turn those dials, be it the front or the back, whichever end you make the base, be the front or the back. But before you get into that, you have to inspect the shell of this base. Now, this particular shell, although it's in good condition, it's got flash on it. This is a brand new flat. This is a brand new shell. And if you look right here at that hole, that's one of the holes where the control dial goes at. There's flash inside that dial, inside that hole. Like if you look right along the edge there, there's a little flash in there, see? That flash, along with flash here in this hole, throughout, among all the holes on this base, that flash has to be removed, because if you don't remove it, it can work against you when you go to insert your dial in that space. You need all debris removed. Those holes have to be clear of all debris. Now we're looking at 2 of the 4 prongs of the ITZ gear base. And if you notice, you'll see a gear pattern on these prongs, and you'll see a little notch right there, a little tip right there. You'll see this tip on each one of the prongs that's going to fit inside the shell of this base. Remember that flash I was telling you about? Well, when you remove that flash, you give this tip a clean surface to fit into. Now that we've taken a look at the base under the microscope, we're now going to begin the process of removing flash and tweaking this base. I have here a small tool set. Found it in Walmart for like $5. And this set, it has files in it. It's got a flat file, a rectangular one, and this one's a triangle. And this one that's right here in my hand, this one is a rounded file. It's a rat tail file. And this file is very handy when it comes down to removing flash and opening the holes better on this ITZ gear base. And what I simply do, I take my file and I insert it into one of the holes, just like that, and I spin it. I ream out this hole a little bit, and this file is the right diameter, perfect diameter, because of course you don't want to open these holes up too much, because you could make the holes so big that the gear themselves will sit too loose, and if that happens, you're gonna have to fill that hole. There was one coach I had talked to. He said he uses a little bit of clay inside these holes to hold the dials. So if that happens, that's probably a solution for you if you ream out these holes too much. But this rat tail file does perfect. Just stick it in a little bit and spin it some, and that reams out that hole. So we go to the other holes here, and we do it again. Okay, from this angle it looks clear. Okay, we've already reamed out the holes on this frame right here. We're now going to flash the prongs of this ITZ gear base. All right. Now, a typical, traditional base. These bases you see I'm placing here on the board. The ITZ gear base is different from these bases. Why? Because, as you already know, a traditional base comes already put together. Okay? Now, normally when I tweak a base like this, a traditional base, I run test the base first to see what it's doing before I tweak it, right? And then after I tweak it, I can see the difference in the base's performance. Now TZ base, because it comes in several parts, I skip the step of test running it first. Now, although I can put the base together out of the pack, try and run it, right, and then disassemble it and begin my tweaks, I could do that. But I'm going to skip that step. I normally do with these ITZ bases. Okay, so I have two pairs of pliers here that I use to hold the prongs as I flash and use my warm pliers on them. Okay, I can use either my needle nose pliers, or I can use these types of pliers here. I don't know what the name of these pliers are, but these ones. So for this video, I'm going to use these pliers to hold my my prongs. And what's good about these pliers is you can put the gear of the prong right inside the jaws of these pliers, right? And you got a perfect hold. Let me get situated here. See? Now, notice I'm only using 2 fingers and I'm not squeezing, because if I squeeze, I'll cut right through the plastic and I'll ruin this prong and it won't be any good to me. But notice how the prong is exposed, where I can now get my lighter over it. And as you already know, you don't want to keep flame too long on plastic because it'll melt, right? Okay, so I get my fire going and I do that. Okay, flip it over, get my fire going, I do it again. See that? And we can set that prong over there. Okay, put our lighter down. We're going to grab the other prong. We're going to do each prong just like this. I want to set it up so that the flat part of the prong is facing down. Alright. See, some guys, they flash like this. They hold the prong vertical and they put the heat under like that. I prefer to flash like this, getting the heat along the length of the prong on both sides. So I get my heat going, I do that. Flip the base over, the prong over. Do it again. That one's done. Okay? Since we're here, might as well grab the other one and do it again. And you gotta handle these prongs with kid gloves. Okay? These prongs can be sensitive if you smash too hard. Remember, see, I'm only using a couple of fingers to hold the prong in place. And again, do that, flip it over, missed, do it again. There it is, flashed. All right, I'm gonna grab this prong and set it up. You also want to be careful not to drop the prong on the floor, because it's a very small piece and it can get away from you. I like to keep my hands over the table, so in case I do drop a piece, I have a better chance at finding it. Get my fire going, pass it over, do it again. There it is. So now, All of my prongs have been flashed. Put my lighter away. I still have my pliers warming on the coffee mug warmer. And while they're warming, I want to talk to you about some other things concerning applying heat to the prongs of this base. If you look closely, let's get this prong back in the grip of our pliers here. The prong is like a strip, okay? It's very sensitive. If you apply very hot pliers to these prongs, those prongs will shrivel up and shrink. They'll close up on you see? And the prong will be useless to you. So you want to be careful how you handle your hot pliers. My pliers are still warm. Let me grab a different pair of pliers here so I can demonstrate this. Here are a cool set of pliers here, okay? Let's say if these pliers just came off the warmer. I do a touch test to measure the intensity of the heat on the pliers. When I do that touch test, if my fingers sting by simply doing that, that tells me the pliers are too hot and not to put them on the prongs. Wave them a little bit. Get the pliers a little bit warmer than just warm, but not so hot that they melt. And that's the area that you're going to have to figure out on your own through your experience, okay? Now, I have here my toothpaste tube prop here. It's perfect for demonstrating what a prong looks like and how it behaves. When you apply heat to these ITZ prongs, remember how I said the prong is gonna buckle if you put too much heat on it? Well, when you apply your heat, your warm pliers, the prong is gonna go from just being straight like this, and it's gonna give you a slight curl, like so. See, that's what you want, because that curl is gonna tell you what end of the base. Remember those ends of the base that we talked about? I talked about earlier. That curl is going to tell you what end of the base is going to be the front. Okay? If the curl is going like this, that means you want to put the prong in this way so the base will move like this. You see? Okay, so imagine this top part is the part that goes in the base. Just a little peg, right? That fits in there. Okay, and your prong is swept back just like this. See that sweep? See that? You want your prongs to sit just like that in the base. Maybe not so deep in the curl, but you know, you want them to have a slight curl. That's what's going to encourage forward motion of your base. Okay, if the prongs are going back this way, right, base won't go that way. So at any rate, whichever way the curve is going, all right, this is your convex side. That's going to be the front of the base. All right. So I think my pliers now are ready to go. So I'm going to, here are my hot pliers. I'm gonna touch. Okay, they're warm. It didn't sting my hand. I'm gonna set them there for a little bit longer. I got a little bit of debris on the edge of the base here, on the edge of the frame of the base. Okay, we're gonna cut that off later. That's nothing to really worry about right now. Okay, so I'm gonna get my my pliers here. We're gonna grab one of our prongs using the claws of this pair of pliers. We're going to lock in to the gear of that prong, and with the other hand here, I want to reach over and get my pliers, my warm pliers. Touch it. Okay, they're warm. Now, take the pliers and put it on the prong, like so. And you want to be careful not to twist your prong, because that will cause the base to run erratic. And you want to flip it over. See? Now for the sake of the camera, I have to contort my hand this way. But these are the changes I go through to get this information out to you guys. Okay? Flatten the prong, put the heat on that. And you want to be careful not to push in on the prong. You don't want to crimp the prong as you apply your heat. This is a very critical time when you apply these heated pliers to these prongs, because also these heated pliers, they shape the prong, see? Okay, that's one of them done. We'll move that one over there. And we're going to apply our pliers back to the coffee mug warmer. Now these pliers, they're good for a couple of passes on one set of prongs. Then you got to put them back on the warmer to get hot again. So we did this prong. So we're going to move over to the other three. Let's take inventory of what we've done so far to this base. We removed the flash from the holes on the frame of our base, and we've used our hot pliers and our lighter on the prongs of this base. So the next step now is to start putting these components inside the shell or frame of this base. Now I already know what some of you are thinking. Well, Marius, you ain't done tweaking that base. Right, you're right, I'm not. But I've gotten the prongs to a place where I'm comfortable now, where I can put this base together and finish the tweaking after all the components have been mounted. We're going to run tests and we're going to tweak some more once all of these components are inside the frame of this base. Now, as the frame of this base sits, notice as I touch each side of the base, right? The frame of the base, it rocks. I want the frame of this base on a flat surface so I can install my components. And the reason why it's rocking is because these little hooks right here, these are the hooks that holds the figure onto the frame of the base. And for example, grab this, my Steeler figure. See how the figure sits? Those little hooks right there is what holds the figure on. But for assembly, those little hooks, they rock. So I have another little modification, another little tool that I like to use. And this is a little makeshift tool. It's little shipping components, little shipping pads that came with an electronic device that I purchased a while back. And I set my ITZ base on top of this pad, see? See the space I left there between the two components? Well, that's where I put the hooks at. So now I have a solid platform to work when I install my components. Okay, we're going to put our prongs up here. right? So what I like to do first, well, what you should do, you want to put the prongs in the frame of the base first, and then you install the control dials. Okay, so we're gonna put these dials over here, and then later this is the cover that's going to go over top of all of the equipment. This piece is what's going to keep the gears and the control dials mounted inside the frame. So we're going to put that over there. So remember how I said the prongs are going to bend a little bit? When you mount these prongs into the frame, you want to make sure that the bend of the prongs are all going in the same direction. Okay, if you got one prong bent this way, another one bent the other way, that could cause your base to perform erratically. So by hand, let's back up a little bit, we can insert our prongs into the corners of the base. By hand, we can do this part, okay? Now, if you look close, you see the edge of the frame. Well, that edge is grabbing the gear of the base, of the gear of the prong. So you can turn the prong up. You could turn this upside down, and the prong won't fall out. Okay. So now we're gonna go to the other prong, other side, and do the same thing. By hand, you're gonna simply set the prong inside the frame of the base. Gonna make sure we have smooth operation. As I turn the gear with my nail, you see how the prong is moving? See how it's turning? Okay, that's a good look there. Now you want, again, you want to make sure that the sweep of your prongs are going in the same direction. And if you look at this prong down here, the sweep is going back that way. But this one, this prong right here, get a better look. This prong on this side, this sweep is a little vertical. So let me turn it a little bit and let's see if I can change directions here. Okay, so this prong doesn't have any curl in it, but that's okay. We're gonna, because we still got more tweaking to do. All right. Now, here is where it gets interesting. We're gonna put our base back on our pad here, okay? Have our needle nose pliers, and we have our control knob. The control knob fits on this hole right here, okay? You can't just put the control knob in there, because you have to respect the position of the gears on the prongs. Allow me to use my hands here as a demonstration. Think of my fingers as gears, right? Each gear is supposed to fit interlocking like this. If the teeth of those gears hit like that, you're going to throw off the alignment of your prongs. See? So when you install this control knob into this base, you got to make sure that you don't disturb the position of the prongs. You see? So as it's seen right now, the prongs are, let me adjust right here real quick. The prongs are straight, right? Now using my needle nose pliers is the best way to get this knob in position. If I just arbitrarily put that knob in there, I could potentially throw off the alignment of my prongs. Now, this prong on this side has been turned a little bit. So I gotta take the control knob out and reposition this prong on this side and try again. Alright? So we're gonna set that there. Remember the game Operation? That's what this is like. Take the control knob out. Going to check for alignment, and you want to make sure that when you use those hot pliers, do not twist the prong, okay? Because that's all part of the alignment. If the prong is twisted like that, okay, you're going to then have to make sure that gear is set in a way that it will position these prongs straight. All right, so now got my prongs set up straight, right? Put our base back on the pad here. Now, I want to be careful, again, not to disrupt the position of my prongs. See if I can set it in there. I think I did it. See, again, for the sake of this camera, I have to be, I'm in an awkward position here. Okay. Now, you see the dial and its relationship to the prongs? Although the dial doesn't have to be straight. The dial can be put in this way, like that, like this, like that. It doesn't matter because that's on the control knob. What has to be straight are these prongs on both the front and back of the base. Now I'm going to do the same thing to the rear here. I'm going to do that offline. So for the most part, you understand that you got to put this dial in after you put in the prongs. Now that I have the base put together, the one part that's left over, along with this front end you see right here, this is the cover that goes over top of the gears and the control knob. Without this top right here, without this piece, the control knobs will fall out of the base. So this is a very important part. So I'll set that back on the board. I have the base itself under the microscope. And if you look at it initially on this end of the base, you'll see this prong is not straight. It could be a little, I can adjust that prong. So basically what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my control dial out so I can make my adjustment to this prong here. See, if I try to straighten this prong, the gear transfer is going to go up to this prong and throw it off. See, so that's why this control dial must be taken out before I straighten this prong. I'm going to move this dial one gear tooth counterclockwise, as you see it here on the screen. Now this end of the base here, I like the positioning of my prongs, so I'm not going to make any adjustments there. Remember I said earlier, it's not important how the control dial, what direction it's positioned in, because its only job is when you turn this dial one direction or another direction, that's supposed to transfer drive to your prongs. You don't necessarily have to turn this dial to get the prongs to turn. On the outer edge of the base, you can use your thumbnail or your finger and turn the gears on the dials that protrude outside the edge of the frame of the base, and that will transfer drive throughout that gear section there. Okay, so I'm going to take this base and I'm going to make my adjustment to this prong, and we're going to move to the next phase of tweaking this base. I've made the adjustments I needed to make to my prongs. Now this is a very sensitive point when dealing with this base at this time, because if you turn the base upside down, the control dials that you see in the middle, they'll fall out. You don't want to turn anything right now because the control dial could pop out of position, and then you're going to have to reset the base. So I get my cover, you see here, and notice the 4 cutouts, 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? That's where your prongs are going to protrude from, and you have a hole here and a hole there. The control dial is going to protrude from those holes. These little hooks right here, one on each side. That's where the cover will lock into place on the side here. Okay? So now by hand, I simply lay the cover inside the base like so, and very gingerly snap in the cover. And then once you get to this point, all the components in the base will become locked in. You also got little tabs on the ends of the cover that fit along the edges here of the base, and you're doing this by hand. All right, because once you get the base to this point, nothing will fall out. You see? So I could turn the dial like so. I grab the outside edge of one of the gear prongs. See how I could turn the dial, and it turns one end, but it doesn't affect the bottom. All right. And if I want, you can grab the control dial itself. But if you know your fingers can fit in there, but it's tight. You use your pliers like so, and you can turn your dial back. But if you're in a game situation, you don't have time to stick pliers in there. Get your fingernail on the outside edge, and you make adjustments to the prong like so. All right, and you do the same thing in the rear. To make sure that cover is fully seated. Take my thumb, okay, and turn the dial like that to get the get the prongs to move in the way that I need them to. See? I want to bring it back. Okay, this bass is kind of stubborn, but we'll work with it to get it to respond in the way that we need it to. So now at this point, I can test run this bass. You can put the bass on the board and we can run it and see what it does. Alright, we still got more tweaking to do. Alright, now based on the positioning of these prongs, this looks like this is going to be the front of the bass. And this is the front end right here that you can mount on to this bass to give it a rounded front so that the bass can get open if you're using it as a receiver. So we simply snap it on, and you see how the front is now rounded and the back is flat. Okay, so it's looking like this is going to be the front of the bass. If not, we're going to tweak these prongs some more and get these prongs to lay down in one direction. And if push comes to shove, I'll disassemble this bass and tweak these prongs outside of the frame. So we're going to put the bass on the table here. We're going to run it. Let's move these basses over. We don't need those guys in the shot. Let's adjust our camera so we can get full view. Let's run it. Okay, a bit choppy. And part of the reason why, the prongs aren't well positioned. See, some of the prongs, if you look at my hands, one of the prongs is like that, another one's back like that. See, so we got to get those prongs properly aligned. See, so we can smooth out the performance of this bass. I made another adjustment to the rear prongs on this bass. I put the hot pliers on these prongs to get these prongs to lay back, to lay down this way. So let's put the bass on the table. Let's see what type of performance that we get from it. Already, by simply making corrections to the back prongs here is what gave this bass better performance. And I'm still going to hit these front prongs again. So I hope that you've gotten something out of this video. I hope that this video will help you in your tweaking journey, especially with this ITZ gear bass. I'm going to do some more work with this bass offline, and we're going to see if we can get this bass to make one of our teams. I'm Mo. Thanks for watching.